शक्ति दे, बलि चढ़ाऊं तेरे आगे, स्वीकार करो।
Welcome to the Trashcats Trashcast. I'm Ricky.
I'm Steven.
Today we're going to discuss the mysterious blood cult of the Thuggees and the true origins of thug life.
Thug life episode, dude.
That's right, dog. First, how was your week?
My week's been okay. I feel like I've had a lot of random kind of not great stuff going, but I'm like super focused, doing all right in school, doing lots of art and pod shit, so I'm good. How about you, man?
I'm doing okay. Stress has been a little high, but I'm navigating it. Trying to remind myself that the limitations that I put on myself are only that's exactly that, things that I put on myself, and I don't need to do that. So,
man, it feels good when you do have those realizations and are able to just let the fuck go of some shit, doesn't it?
You know, when you're like sitting in bed and you're trying to go to sleep and it's like you remember something like, fuck, I got to do this week. I got to make sure I get that done. And it's like, I'm not going to do it right now. I can do it in the morning. I go to sleep right now. I'll have a better job doing it tomorrow. So don't think about it right now because it's not important. I'm not going to get up and do it.
Right.
So
I love that feeling of crossing shit off my to-do list that I know I'm not going to do. Instead of like keeping it on there all day, like on a day I know I'm not going to do it, I'm like just crossing it off. Fuck it.
Yep, fuck it.
Yep.
I set my expectations too high. It's okay. We'll try again next week. Exactly.
You got any honorable mentions for us?
I don't this week.
All right, cool. I was going to start with I'm sure, a lot of people have seen all the executive orders Biden passed, man.
Yeah.
Some really good shit. I'm sure there were some bad things in some of it, but there's shit about COVID, LGBTQ, ending the Muslim ban, and then the one I was super excited about, President Joe Biden on Tuesday signed an executive order that will phase out Department of Justice use of private fucking prisons.
That's fucking amazing. It's so nice.
Fucking huge. All those other things are equally as important too, but I just was really caught off guard by the private prison shit because that's been such a fucking problem.
I remember when I first found out about that even being an issue, and I was like, how is that even a thing? Like, how is that even possible?
Dude, honest, like, as a kid, that was my exact same reaction too, and I fucking learned about it through System of the Down songs.
Oh,
you know
really?
what I mean? That's what made me like look into that shit, which I think is so fucking rad of them. But like learning that as a kid, it was like, how the fuck could a prison be for profit? Like,
right?
It's just fucking nuts. So I don't know. This week, a lot of undoing of the last 4 years of bullshit. So I think that was cool. And then so I got two more. This second honorable mention. As a side note, the ACLU, the former head of the ACLU was on, his name is Ira Glaser, was on Rogan this week and talking about freedom of speech, and it a very inspirational human being. And the reason I bring that up is the second honorable mention is about an album cover and freedom of speech issues. So I'm going to send you this cover real quick. So this band, they're a punkish metal band. I would kind of like put them under punk thrash. Sorry, this is being real goofy. Let me send it to you.
I hear them clicks.
Oh, it's so frustrating. Sorry, I'm going to send you the link instead. Sorry, guys.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Okay, so a Tennessee man, this is an article from fucking Boing Boing. A Tennessee man, presumably disenchanted with local law enforcement, posted the above image on social media. And this photo is one of their album covers. Their band is called The Last Rite. The image shows two people urinating on a headstone, crudely edited to include a portrait of Sergeant Daniel Baker, a Dixon County cop who was killed in the line of duty in 2018. They put this photo on their 2009 album released by the band called The Rights. So, regardless of what you think of what they're doing, like, this is their art, this is their fucking album cover. But the police believed that this Photoshop photo was real, and using the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, they went after these two musicians.
Wow.
And they were told they weren't allowed to. But the cops tracked him down and charged him with harassment over a Photoshopped album cover for desecrating a grave digitally, and he's held on $76,000 bail in Dixon County Jail bond. Sorry, it's just so fucking crazy. His lawyer is just like ready to fucking go. Like they're so fucking pissed. Like regardless of what you think of what they're doing, I mean,
it's like, is it fucked up? Yeah. Is it metal? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But it's just crazy that there's like that they can like there's proof. There's evidence that it's not the grave of this cop.
Right. Even if it fucking was, I think it's bullshit for them to go after him. But especially like it can't be a crime if it didn't fucking happen.
Right,
like,
exactly.
And that's what they're using our fucking money and resources to go after two fucking punk dudes for an album cover.
Right. That's your tax dollars at work, y'all. Defund the police.
Fucking garbage. Yeah, man. I wanted to find like a way to support these dudes, but it's been kind of hard to find out information. So if we find something, we'll definitely share it. It's fucked. So third honorable mention, I think I showed you this dude before. This is my homie. He's a rapper from Florida, Chaotic Steel. I've actually done some of his album art in the past, and this, he does a bunch of really cool shit. Very lyrical writer. He's got a little bit of a strange music sound, but he's like real underground. It's not like the poppy flashy shit. So specifically I'm sharing this song Dungeon, and I believe this is off the album Poison, which I did an album cover for. And this dude's just really fucking cool, man. What did you think of that video? I mean the song.
I thought it was dope. Definitely I felt like the bass kicked ass. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
It was well produced.
Yeah.
For, if he's not, if he's not like, mainstream or whatever, he's got good quality shit.
Yeah, he's got his own, like, I believe it's his own independent label, Wicked Noise. And I think his dude, I don't want to say the wrong name, but one of his buddies is his producer. And, he does it all himself. It's just, him doing it, writing, making shit, and, very lyrical, and he has some of it has a trappish sound, but it's way deeper than any radio shit. Like that video or that song Dungeon, it's like feels like bullets coming out, like he's just spitting, and like the first time I heard it, I pictured like the dungeon hallway, like in dark, covered in like sparkling glass, and just like a dude meditating, floating through the dungeon tunnel. Like it's a heavy one.
Yeah, fucking dope track. I'm gonna be listening to more Chaotic Steel in the next couple of days for sure, at least.
Fuck yeah, and we'll be sharing all this info. He's on Instagram, some on YouTube and Spotify for sure. So I think that about does it for me for honorable mentions.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So we did a lot of research for this episode. I'm really excited to get into this one. Thug life.
Yeah, thug life all day.
Should I start us off?
Yeah, man. Tell me. Let's get into it.
Cool. So, kick this off by asking you, when's the last time you watched Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom?
Never. No, I've seen.
What?
I haven't seen it all the way through in one sitting. I've seen bits and pieces throughout my life.
Really?
Yeah, as with all Indiana Jones movies, actually. Never watched them all the way through, and it was just it wasn't like a choice thing. It just never came up.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I think they're fun movies, but they're not good films.
Yeah. I can gather that.
Yeah. So in the Temple of Doom, you remember when they're chanting the Kalima, Kalima, and he rips out the beating heart? So those dudes are the Thuggees. And it is a very ignorant depiction of the Thuggee cult, of which we are going to discuss today. And we're going to hopefully do a little bit more accurate of a job than they did. But that was the Thuggees in Indiana Jones. So by the end of this episode, we're going to learn all about them and why this so-called cult of assassins, why they existed, and how they altered history so radically that we still worship and use their name today. Like, it's so crazy. Like, thug life came from the Thuggees.
Yeah, it's just like a cult in India, and I think we'd have to really fuck up real hard to get a depiction of them as ignorant as in the movie. It's very, it's a very whitewashed version of, like, like they do it in movies today. Like anytime they want to show that they're in like Mexico, they have like an orange filter over their shit, or like same with like in the Middle East, like everything's very light sand colored and shit. Right. And it's like, okay, you don't have to, that's not what it looks, the light's not a different color over there. The air isn't that different, you can just leave it.
A lot of times I really hate that blue-green light shit color correction they do on movies to like make things look gritty, and it's like, it normally looks really bad too. Real quick, can I bring up a quick side note?
Yeah.
So, have you heard of the movie Green Inferno?
I have not.
All right, so I should know the name of this director because he's a very prolific horror director. But this dude did this movie Green Inferno, and it's about plane crash, and they land on a cannibal island in South America.
Oh, I've seen this movie. That's Eli Roth.
Yes, Eli Roth. So that movie, I don't know if did you know this while they were watching? That's a real tribe.
I did not know that.
That is a real tribe that it had. I don't know if the cannibalism part is true, but it's a previously uncontacted tribe. That's
wild.
We knew existed. There's a couple of them in the world, particularly South America, and there's a couple of them. And dude was able to make a connection with them to shoot this movie. And the movie portrays them as savages, cannibals, and they tear apart these American students or whatever. And despite whatever you think of the movie, it's really fucking cool because it looks so authentic and brutal and beautiful. Like, these people have just a beautiful aesthetic. But what's fucked up is a lot of the proceeds of the movie were supposed to go to help these people. And it turns out a lot of the money didn't make it to them. And this tribe has been fucked up to this day because they were uncontacted. They hadn't seen like even cameras and shit like that to the extent of like it just sent their world crashing down. You know what I mean?
Imagine someone comes from 2,000 years in the future and were to show us things and show us what they're something from their culture and shit. Like, it would change everything in the way that we act.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's so terrible, but it's an interesting problem.
Yeah.
And you don't get to see that on film very often. Sorry, I thought that was...
Yeah, no, that's super fucking cool that they were able to do that too.
Right.
They were able to, get the connection. I mean, to do that, and hopefully they treated it with as much caution as they possibly could. But yeah, and it sucks that money didn't get to them. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's politics and all of that.
I don't think they did it responsibly, but the idea of it is so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start off. I want to read a brief passage from the intro of one of the research books you found. It's titled "History of the Thugs" or "Fancigars." I was so confident. I was so confident I wasn't going to fuck that up, and then that was the first one I fuck up. History of the Thugs or Fancigars.
So, real quick, this book was written by someone else, but it includes largely the accounts of this dude, Sleeman, who we're going to be talking about.
Young Sleeman. So we'd also wanted to jump off right off the top and say, like, there's a lot of this account information that's, questionable, and it's, different by a lot of different accounts. So this was us boiling down what we could to get what could be the closest picture of what's described.
Yeah,
so,
take with a grain of salt.
So this quote, "This is the account of the thugs, their particular superstitions, and their methods for proceeding to rob and murder travelers. For a period of 200 years in India, there existed a secret association of assassins bound together by superstition that pursued robbery and murder as a regular means of substance. By a process of early education and gradual training, its members consider murder and robbery not as crimes, but rather as a religious association. Not 1 in 100 of them have been caught or brought into answer for any of their human tribunal for his atrocious crimes," which is different than what we found in other places. Some of them, that like they didn't answer for their crimes, but there's a lot of other things that say that they did.
Yeah, even in so that's the intro of this book, and even in the book, it gets contradicted. So it's hard to know what exactly is the truth, but we do know some things, and some things are a little confusing.
Yeah.
So now we do want to point out the History of the Thugs book. We're going to reference back to that. So like I said, it was written by somebody else, but it largely includes authentic documents published by W.H. Sleeman, and he was the superintendent of the Thug Police, which is a pretty cool title.
It'd be Thug Police, boy.
Yeah, but it
Thug
definitely speaks to his bias or attempt to control the narrative, which is something we're going to explore later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, just to clarify, the word fancigars and thugs or thuggee are used interchangeably. The fancigars or stranglers are thus designated from the Hindu word fancy, meaning noose. In the more northern parts of India, these murderers are called thugs.
Yeah,
so
buddy.
It's just different dialects and whatnot.
Yeah, the English word thug traces its roots to the Hindi word thog, which means swindler or deceiver. So thuggee became a verb for the swindling or deceiving. And it also came to describe the deception, the murdery, and robbery of the travelers, which was popular in the northern parts of the Indian subcontinent, and particularly India.
So they were said to have traveled in groups across the Indian subcontinent. There were numerous traditions about their origin, that brought to their origin. One account traced it to some Muslim tribes that formed from after they fled Delhi after murdering a physician who cured a royal elephant, that's a buck wild story in itself. Like they it's like that's a political thing, that happened.
Yeah, there's more to those stories, but I didn't exactly know how to piece it together. But apparently that physician is like important in Muslim history, and some of these origin stories like tied into the formation of the great Muslim tribes. So
yeah, the another one, trace it back to some great Muslim families who fled after murdering a favored slave of Akbar. There's not one theory that's confirmed.
Right. Part of the reason the history of the thugs is so mysterious and difficult to understand is because it was intended to be hidden from outsiders. They often changed location and assumed other names. The Europeans didn't even discover the thugs till 1799, when it is said that anywhere from 100 to 1,000, depending on which story you're looking at, of them were apprehended with a vast amount of treasure in the vicinity of Bangalore. I would also like to point out that this is like the first big contradiction of the book. Like, the intro is like, they never answered for any of their crimes, and then like 2 pages later, like they start the origins of the Thuggee by saying, we discovered them when we arrested 100 to 1,000 of them. So
right, yeah.
It's like, there's definitely some major bias on the people who told the history. So
yeah,
their earliest known...
They got that in there real quick.
Yeah. So, but what's really interesting is like, we don't know how long they operated. Like, the earliest known reference of the thugs, they were essentially described as a band or a fraternity rather than thieves, but they were written about as early as 1356.
Yeah, that's fucking wild. It's like I like to try to... I started doing this more lately, especially from watching shows like Vikings and stuff like that, where it's like looking at what was happening there in that particular time, but like what else was happening in the world. Like when you say, when you talk about like American history and certain things that were like happening over here, and it seems like such a long time ago. And then you realize like, oh, there were still like kingdom, or it wasn't that long ago. You look and it's like, oh, there were like kingdoms still in England and shit. Like it's like fucking, it seems like it was certain things were so long ago, or if they weren't that far, but like you can't really place them all together unless you consider the rest of the world. But
right, and it's just so wild, like that they could potentially have been around that long. Like,
yeah. Yeah, that alone puts them at, at least 300 years, that's just fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So the members often consisted of families and tribes. Sometimes the tribes would work together or on their own. So it can be hard to determine how connected they were with each other. A lot of groups were like independent cells. And you see that with, even gangs. Like that's like a gang thing today, is like you can, there's it's not just all Bloods. It's like there's different sects within, Bloods and shit like that. Like that's a thing.
Yeah. They're largely considered to be a Hindu organization because they're thought of as always worshiping the goddess Kali. Is it Kali?
I was going to say Kali.
See, I never know which one. But they're thought to have always worshipped Kali, but that's not always true. But they were largely Hindu. But it is estimated that up to one third of the Thuggees were Muslim as well. So despite their differences, or if they were operating in groups or separately or independently, they were all Thuggee, and that's really important.
Yeah. They basically operated as like highway bandits. They would travel major roads in and out of cities searching for loot. It seems like they were primarily land-based. There were also groups of river Thuggee, which is that makes me think of like some Alabama boy shit.
Right.
Some good old fucking swamp water boy shit. While they didn't often travel, they instead would take like 1 or 2 big excursions every year. Their victims were almost exclusively travelers whom they would like fall in with on the road. They would each gang had a leader who directed their movements of numerous gangs. Some usually remained at home while the rest are engaged in the work of the pillage and the murder. Older members would often act as spies and support. So like it was a whole fucking group effort.
It's like a network, a lifestyle. Like this is how they survived.
Right. Those that are abroad are often divided into separate parties of like 10 or 15 people. They either follow each other at some distance, or the parties would take different routes. They rendezvous at a certain place in advance. Different gangs sometimes act together, occasionally apprising one another by approaching travelers whose destruction provides a rich, booty.
Rich booty.
That rich booty boy. Oh, that's my other rap name now, is Rich Booty Boy.
There we go.
That's going to be for the Sensual albums.
So, as like independent and sometimes as chaotic as they would seem, they're also very organized.
Right. Super structured. And they would have had to be for them to be around that long and still be so secretive as they were.
Right. Dude, you know what it reminds me of is fucking Aladdin. What is the 40 Thieves or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, it's like this is probably the origin of a lot of like tales like that from history,
Yeah, I didn't even consider that one, but yeah, absolutely.
I haven't seen that in so long. I don't know why that came to mind. But the Thuggee often referenced individual members as private. So it suggests that they really did have the organization in a military fashion. So they almost had their own rankings, or, there definitely was a hierarchy of power. They generally never committed robbery without murder. So this is where things start to get complicated.
Yeah.
The Thuggee units would assume the physical appearance of their travelers. Like you said, they slip in with them on the road. They look like travelers. That they wouldn't necessarily wear like particular disguises. They just acted like that, they're traveling the roads too. So they often wore turbans. They carried with them a certain amount of baggage, like their luggage and shit, to make it all look real. Sometimes they traveled on horseback. They'd have their tents, just a small amount of gear with them, and they would pass for a person, like a regular person or a wealthy merchant. They could kind of play it up depending on who they're going after. And their attire as travelers would deceive peasants and royalty alike. So they kind of had that chameleon vibe.
Yeah, that's some extra, stealth level shit.
Yeah.
I just played D&D last night. So the whole time when I was looking over these notes, and I'm thinking like, man, there's so much of this that would be like, this is some D&D campaign type of shit. Like you would have to roll for deception, and
And you're a rogue right now, right?
No, ranger.
Oh, done.
5e, absolutely, I'm a ranger.
Nice.
So fucking overpowered.
I'm still a rogue. I love the deception shit. This is totally shit I would do.
Yeah. The sneak attacks are worth it.
Dude, I got 4d6s right now.
That's fucking crazy. We'll have to do a D&D episode. Anyway.
For sure.
The methods used by the thugs are meant to reap maximum loot without being caught. So they didn't accost travelers unless their own numbers were greater than those of the victims. They flattered the travelers they met, which gave them a chance to assess what kind of wealth they had. Many of them avoided committing thuggee near the areas in which they lived. So like they wouldn't go off murdering people, near their home or, near target, their associated, places. So discovering their crimes was a very difficult task.
Dude, I love how, I love that line, committing thuggee. Like, yeah. I love how it's a verb,
Right.
That's so cool. So,
what are you going to get up to today? I'm going to go do some thuggee,
Do some thuggee. They usually attacked in the evening. That seemed to be their favorite time. They often pretended to be either Hindu or Muslim to fool their victims. Whatever the situation required, they would use religion to their advantage. They used a jargon known as, and I'm not going to pronounce this right.
Ramase.
Ramesses? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And this was their way to disguise their true intention from their target. So they would communicate secretly. They had like double speak. They used their own dialects, slang, and gestures. And this allowed them to communicate between themselves while they like found the most opportune time to like jump their victim.
Mm-hmm.
It's very clever, right?
Super organized and structured the way they did it. Definitely it was, it wasn't just, jump on, each person picks a dude and jump them. They would, like you said, they would use the fuck's it called? They would strangle people.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into their methods of strangulation even more, but it really was the type of thing where it's like, they're speaking secretly and they know the right second where they're all gonna like get these dudes at the same time. Two dudes hold their arms, one dude strangles them. It's all like a coordinated deception.
Yeah, it's definitely just you said the gestures. That was one of the things I found when I was looking stuff up, was that like they use like hand signals to each other, and it's like they use gang signs. They had that.
Sleeman said they often communicated, especially on the boats, by tapping. Like they would know if tapped like the side of the boat a certain number of times, it meant like it's go time or whatever.
It's fucking thieves can't.
Yeah, dude. Thieves speak, right? Or is it can't?
Can't.
Ah.
I think it was thieves speak in one of the older editions.
Earlier.
Yeah. So a common method used was to distract their victims by engaging them in conversation, like you said. So the others in the band could strangle them swiftly from behind. Although strangulation is one of their most recognized methods of murder, they also use blades and poison. In order to avoid suspicion, they avoided carrying more than a few swords. But of course, they still carried some swords, though. Don't get it twisted.
Always got to have a few.
Just gotta have a couple, Just
never know.
Sometimes they mutilated the corpse of their victims to avoid detection. The corpses were then hidden or buried. They typically buried the corpses face down by cutting, and they cut gashes into the body. So it prevented the corpse from bloating during decomposition and disrupting the sand and then attracting jackals. So they could just go there undetected for a much, much longer time.
Dude, that made me so happy the first time I read that.
Attracting jackals.
Dude, it's so fucking brutal. I love it. It reminds me of...
Some narc-ass jackals.
Yeah. I forget which... I don't think it was the Iceman. It was a different dude, a different mafia killer. And it's definitely been used by a lot. But where they, before they dump the body in the river, you wrap them in barbed wire. So as their body bloats, the wire helps slice them apart and keep from,
fucking
floating.
That's murder engineering.
Yeah, so fucking cool. So back, you're in the desert. They can't be digging like deep graves in sand or difficult terrain, so they were typically shallow graves, and they didn't want the sand to look disturbed or jackals to start digging them up, so they'd mutilate the fuck out of some of these corpses.
Damn,
that's so crazy. So the river Thuggee were equally as wild. They would break their victim's back and throw the corpse into the river to be eaten by crocodiles.
Fuck that.
Dude, I love crocodiles. I think
I think they're super cool. I just don't want to be part of the food chain. That's like in my top 3 of ways I don't want to die.
I feel it, but I would be pretty happy if that's how I went out too.
It's like, just because your back's broken doesn't mean that you're dead.
See, I couldn't specify. It seemed like they would break the backs while they were still alive. I wasn't sure. If
I'm dead, whatever, whoever I can be eaten, that's fine. But
Yeah.
I don't want to be eaten fucking alive. That's just one of the fucking craziest things to me to think about.
It's so metal, though.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I'm good with not living it.
I feel like I'd rather be eaten alive than like burnt alive, though. I feel like fire.
Yeah, fire is the number one.
You think so?
Yeah, fire's the number one. I don't want to go. Drowning is the second one, and being eaten alive. No, yeah, I take that back. Burning, being eaten alive, and then drowning. Because I feel like I've inhaled water before, and that shit hurts like a bitch. So
Dude, they say it's like, people are always like, oh, it's so quick, but they say it's really fucking painful.
yeah, I'm good at that, and I'm good with that. I mean, I don't need to experience more than that.
Okay, just to get a little dark for a second, if you had to choose a way to go, how you going, bro?
Oh, okay, obviously, like in bed in my sleep.
Rule that one out. That's
okay,
not an
yeah,
option.
that's what I'm saying. If I'm counting that one out,
Okay.
I have thought about this before, and I forget where I landed because I was thinking of different ways. Hypothermia doesn't sound too bad.
That's so slow, though.
Yeah, but it's quicker than starving. And
What about like something faster, like jumping off something?
well, I mean, that's the thing is like if I'm not gonna like this like suicide is not that's not an option for me. I don't have it in me to do it.
Fair enough.
So like if it's picking one or the other kind of things, like say I'm in a situation where like I can either eat or I can give the food to someone else so that like they live and like because I don't want to stick around to die by that. I would rather I don't know.
You're too kind.
Yeah. What's your answer?
Oh man, I used to have sketchbooks filled with this answer. This is one I've thought about quite a bit. I liked my favorite. I had actually this is a weird story to tell on a podcast. So I sold drugs to this dude who was a Green Beret vet, and like dude, in their training they have to do shit like simulating like torture and keeping someone who's injured alive. So they'd have things where like they're given a goat and they have to raise it for a couple weeks, and then they have to take a razor to its guts and then keep it alive for a certain amount of time before they kill it.
Jesus.
Like it was like a terrorist that they need more information from before they kill it. And it's like,
yeah,
that's some deep psych training. So this dude had like, if I had the money after I died, he was going to stuff my body with different animals.
Oh shit.
Dude, I had a whole mapped out thing, like where the things would go, and it was going to be so cool. But I got healthy and all my plans went to shit. But I had all kinds of fun plans. If I had to go, it's definitely going to be OD or gun. Quick, euphoric,
That's fair. You're not gonna do the glue your hands to your head and then hang yourself with razor wire.
No, I'm not gonna.
So then it looked like you popped it off real quick.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I'm definitely not gonna do it Thuggee style.
Nah.
As cool as it would be to be eaten by crocodiles, that sounds pretty brutal. Yeah. So they were very smart about how they did things because they only really kept the money or jewels. They didn't want to keep things like clothing or items that could be recognized.
Yeah.
So this loot would be carried back home in their caravans. It would be divvied up, and I wasn't quite sure how, like, if it was an equal cuts thing. It seemed more like, since they were so organized and had a hierarchy, it seems like things were kind of done as a group, but that...
Yeah, I bet there was like a payout system.
Yeah, exactly.
Like higher ranking, or people that took, you took more initiative and you took more risks, then you get paid more.
And my guess is also like, because a lot of it involves like the network of like support, spies, information, I bet a lot of people are paid down the line too. So the loot would be then sold, and because it's stolen, it's going for a slightly lower price, and this helped create a very extensive black market that did very well.
And they're, along that Silk Road too, so...
Yeah, these are the robbers of Silk Road. Like,
yeah.
This is where it all started. So cool.
So, of course, they weren't known for their mercy. They would often avoid killing children of victims, and they would instead adopt them. Which,
Ooh.
you could get into a discussion of, is that really better?
There's a moral quandary on that one.
Yeah, that's the old, what's it called with the train car debacle? It's like, do you move the train car on the different track to kill less people, but but the other people, there's more people on that side, but those people suck. It's a
classic Batman problem.
Yeah. The fucking Riddler.
Joker.
When they did. I can't believe we're laughing during this part.
Dude, I know.
So they did sometimes. They would spare women and children whenever they could. But they would murder them to eliminate a witness if they needed to, or if they had like a substantial amount of loot. Because that's their business. Some of the thugs avoided murdering victims they considered, prescribed according to their beliefs. So, like, a lot of Europeans even was one of the people that they wouldn't attack. They would let other unscrupulous members commit the murder instead. They generally didn't have a remorse, and like I said, they considered murder a business. They said it was the destiny of those whom they'd kill. They said that the destiny of those whom they'd kill was written on their foreheads. So, like, that was their quote, was that it was, they had it coming the whole time.
Yeah, man, that's so brutal. That was written on their foreheads quote was like from a captured Thuggee too. It's so brutal. Now, I just wanted to clarify. Did you say, like, I know they wouldn't kill people sometimes, especially if they thought the person's beliefs were in line with theirs, like maybe their personal faith or something like that. But did you say they wouldn't kill some Europeans? Yeah,
Europeans was, at least in one of the things that I found, and like I said, a lot of this information is like secondhand and other shit like that, but there was a thing that said some of them wouldn't murder Europeans, and I think it was because they saw them as being not worthy. They weren't good enough to give to Kali. So... yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I like this might be a contradiction, or maybe our research not quite good enough, but I have a feeling it's a mix of just like maybe it's not completely understood, and all these groups are different. Like, it's hard to make total generalizations, but I did also see that that they also really like to go after outsiders, like from their country. So I would imagine Europeans were sometimes a prime target.
Yeah.
So and they had to have hated the fucking British.
Yeah.
Which we're gonna have to talk about. I could see it being both though.
Yeah. We'll definitely, if we get further, like later on, we're definitely gonna talk about more of like why there's a lot of, discrepancy over, what's true and what's false.
Now, slight side note: did you watch the new Joker movie?
Yes, I did.
Dude, Joaquin is so fucking good.
Yeah, great movie.
He was in the Church of God called Children of God. Children of God cult.
I didn't know that.
He grew up in that cult as a kid, which was a Christian cult where like there were parents fucking kids and sharing these kids, and it was like hardcore sex abuse in a Christian cult.
Jesus.
And that was like, I think it was like the first 10 years of his life. And he played that role so well because he has dealt with mental illness or just difficult
trauma
shit.
And fuck.
And he plays those roles so well because he's been through a lot more than a lot of people. I just think that's so cool of him.
While we're on the topic of that movie, funny story. My mom had no idea how fucking wild that movie was. And I knew what it was about. and how, kind of dark and fucked up it was. And she was in town visiting before she moved up here. And she's like, hey, let's go see that movie. And I was like, all right, cool. Fuck yeah. And like we left the theater and she was like clearly shaken, she was fine, but she was like, it's like, yeah. I didn't know. She's like, I was, when I think of the Joker and I think of Batman, like I think of Saturday morning cartoons and stuff. And it's like it was just so real. And so, like cut to the core of like, making him a person. That's, and she was the one that got me into like, Silence of the Lambs and shit like that, because she was like, these are scary monsters. They're real people, It's like, fuck Jason and all that shit. Like that's, right. Fake shit. But like, so yeah, she was like, to make this character into a real person and really personify them, is the kind of fucked up part about it. But yeah, the funny story on that one, I thought.
It's such a good one. That movie is really obviously exaggerated, but a brilliant look at mental illness. Yeah, it's just so good.
Destigmatize that shit.
Yeah, for real. So the destiny of those they would kill is written on their foreheads. The garrote is often depicted as a weapon of the Thuggee, and this kind of takes a lot of different forms. But there's also evidence that suggests the guitar, which was a dagger, was one of their personal status weapons. So it might not always have been used in their murdering, but it was an important icon of status, and they sometimes would, like, when they could, they would wear them proudly on their chest. Early reference to thugs reported, they committed their strangulation murders with nooses of rope or catgut, but later they were adapted to use a length of cloth that could be used as a sash or scarf and thus be more easily concealed. So they used lots of different forms of something like a garrote, but it was all different strangulation weapons, and it's often said they use sashes and scarves exclusively, but that's something they later adapted because it's a perfect stealth weapon. They were just wearing their clothes, and this is how they strangled people. So brutal. So this piece of cloth around their neck was sometimes described as a rumal. Might be saying that wrong. It's a head covering or neckerchief. So this is like their thing. It's that word rumal translates as yellow scarf or yellow, which probably refers to the natural cream or khaki color rather than the bright yellow. The rumals were sometimes said to have a weighted medallion on one end, so that when they sling the sash, the weight on one end helps it wrap around the victim's neck easier. And they often had like other different modifications to their rumal, like some of them used different knots and different placements, so it was easy to grab. They could grab a knot on each end, and it would look like a design of the scarf. Sometimes the fabric was serrated on one end, so once it's wrapped around the victim, it would grip a little tighter. There were these like small fine tuning that they would do to this weapon that was so easily concealable. It's just so like stealth kill brutal,
Yeah, and there's a couple reasons why they could have been into the strangulation. There's the one theory that says that they preferred the strangulation because they didn't want to waste a drop of blood that they could offer in sacrifice to Kali. But the truth may have actually come from a law from the Mughal Empire. In the law, for a murderer to actually be sentenced to death, they would have to shed the blood of their victim. So if they murdered but they did not shed the blood, then they might face imprisonment or like hard labor or paying a fine. But they wouldn't risk execution, and that wasn't always true. But for the most part, that was like their law.
I was really confused about that. I had to reread in the book when they reference this a couple times, and it seems so goofy and like antiquated. But I guess if you killed someone but they didn't bleed there were sometimes different punishments or laws based around that.
Yeah, fucking that's that old god shit.
Yeah, and I don't know how, like, I'm sure when they caught these thuggies, they weren't gonna not persecute you because the dude didn't bleed. So
Right.
it might have been a mix between offering to Kali and some old laws, but it's often said that their strangulation was all intended to be part of like these blood rituals. They didn't want to waste a drop, and it's hard to know how much of that is really true, but there's definitely something to it.
Yeah.
So they also, this is so cool, they made preparations of Datura metal, which, thank you, that is Indian thorn apple. This is so cool. I love poisonous plants.
Yeah.
Except when they poison me. But I love
for everyone else, perfect. I'm not into them myself.
Dude, I've always been immune to poison ivy, right?
Yeah.
Like, but your body, it can change. Like, as a kid, I could touch it and shit. But like last fall, I was doing landscaping, and I was like weed whacking like half an acre, like of like 6-foot grass and shit. And I'm weed whacking, and like all the wet matter of the plants are splattered all over me, right? And there's poison ivy everywhere.
Oh.
And I'm like, dude, I'm not allergic. Like, it's fine. Like, the next day, man, like my whole body was so bad.
Oh, Jesus. Fuck.
I was itching for weeks, and it was fucked up. I had gotten a new tattoo the day before, in this like poison ivy splattered all over. It was my arm, and because the tattoo was still scabbed, like it had a fresh new scab on it, the poison didn't get to the tattoo, so I had blister bubbles all over my body except the tattoo, and it didn't get ruined. I was like,
Thank God.
I was like, this is gonna be terrible.
Yeah.
Just a blown out scar. So Indian thorn apple, poisonous plant that was sacred to Shiva with powerful deliriant properties. So sometimes the thugs use this to induce drowsiness or stupefaction in their victims to make strangulation easier. I don't know if they, I had trouble I knew they drank and smoked, but I don't know if they used, like, if this was something that could be euphoric and used for fun. I don't know.
Datura can. I want to say the Native Americans used Datura as a, like a, not like a psychoactive, but just like as a mood elevator.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure somebody has. I mean,
yeah. Let me see. Yeah, for like spiritual and you know, it does affect your consciousness. So they would use it, you know, in small doses.
Slight sedative.
Yeah, and I've heard of the Datura first came to me when I was reading about doing was like I do a lot of research on, like, you know, for D&D stuff. I was looking up more stuff about like making poisons and stuff like that. Before I realized that there's like you know, how to play D&D, and there's like a whole like book of how to do shit like that. I wanted to do research on like, well, what plants can you make poisons with, you know? So I destroyed my, I got added on a list somewhere because of my search history, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Dude.
But, you know, it's, you know, it brought, you know, that one to me. Actually, very, very pretty flower.
Ooh, cool.
But it's also called the Devil's Trumpet, or the
That's so awesome.
Devil's Weed.
Now, what about ricin? Are you familiar with that one?
I'm familiar with it. I thought ricin was just like rat poison. Oh, that's arsenic.
Arsenic, yeah. Ricin got really popularized after Breaking Bad, because it's in that. But it's literally, I forget what plant it is, but it's a totally legal herb. And if you grow enough of it and extract it, it's like, it kills you from like a heart attack like 6 to 48 hours later.
Oh, wow.
And I actually knew a dude. He would make doses of it, and he had it all stashed up. And it's
Oh,
like,
fuck.
It's like, what are you up to, homie? But Yeah, the poison stuff is so brutal. Like,
Yeah, that's another one. That's another strong way I don't want to die is poison. If you've ever, oh man, it's long enough. I don't want to die like Joffrey. Do you watch Game of Thrones? Yeah, fucking.
It's been a while. Like I watched all of it, but I don't remember it as well as I'd like to.
That scene in particular was really fucked up.
Dude, you know how he said you got put on a list for looking shit up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm on a couple, but I remember, oh my God. I remember once I was like 16 and I got arrested, but it was for questioning and I didn't do anything. But the cops came and took my computer and my parents just let them, which was not smart. But dude, I had the Satanic Bible on the desktop. So it was like the Satanic Bible.
For the shortcut,
Right. But then it was meth cooking instructions, pipe bomb cooking instructions, and something else. And they're all just titled that on my desktop, bro.
Oh, Jesus.
And they took my computer and I got it back like a week later. And I really don't think they turned it on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if they did, I'm sure they put software, malware. But I don't think they actually went through my shit because it was right there,
Yeah, wow.
It was like the anarchist cookbook shit. You know what I mean? It's just a dumb kid. But it was all like pretty scared when the cops have your bomb instructions.
Back when you could just download that kind of shit off the internet. I mean, you could like download fucking how to 3D print a gun. Yeah. Shit like that.
They went after that dude. That dude was a fucking asshole. That lead guy, but he was doing some really cool shit. The 3D
3D print gun guy.
Yeah, the upper and lower receiver issue, but he had like Tech 9s printed and shit. Like all you'd need is like the right receiver and you could just and they'd last for a while too. It's great.
Wow. So some of the differences we talked about the river thuggies earlier. They just to not to do anything, but let's get a sidebar and talk about thuggies for a minute. The river thugs usually they preyed upon people like the Hindu pilgrims that were traveling using the Ganga River. Became mostly active during the winter times. The dialect of Ramesay differed from the one used by the compatriots on land. And they also used boats taken on lease from their builders. These were the guys that were, feeding the crocodiles with the corpses.
Right.
Just absolutely brutal shit. But they were, it's different enough, it's further enough south. A lot of the maps we see that, especially in, public school, American public school, didn't really emphasize how fucking gigantic India is.
Right.
But it's like a whole different world north to south.
Yeah.
Both the environment and the lifestyle and the culture.
Yeah.
But the fact that this, the cult was that invasive and deep.
Yeah, and just like that too, like we never really know how many Thuggee there were at a time. Like there's no hard numbers, but like from the book about the Thuggee, now I'm blanking on the name. But that line that they basically rented their boats, the river Thuggee, from their builders, not the shipbuilders, the Thuggee shipbuilders. Like their network was big enough that they had their own boat rental system. Right. Like that says something about their power and size and just the extent of their network.
Yeah, it's fucking nuts. Yeah. How like you said, just how extensive they were, how organized it was, and that's we keep saying it, but like we'll get into it a little bit in a later on. But there's if you feel yourself feeling skeptical about any of this, there's reasons why.
Yeah, but we do know a lot of the aspects of their murder are for sure true. Like there's a lot There's a lot of things we're not sure, but there's a lot we do know too. Yeah. And there's a lot of debate by modern scholars about the more extreme allegations of Thuggee murder. There was talk of like blood rituals and different shit like Indiana Jones. Like one of them, and it's in a lot of the art of the Thuggees, they're depicted as like cutting open the neck of their victim and all the blood going into a well. Like they would fill wells with blood, or they'd be dancing in the blood, or cannibal rumors, like shit like that. Yeah. Is the Indiana Jones kind of shit that is probably not true, but there's a lot of talk of it, and that's all because of who controlled the narrative. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the blood and death part of the Thuggees. So now we're gonna get into the cult part.
Yeah, because they were called a death cult, and there definitely is the death. I think the cult part is where like the more confusing stuff is.
Yeah, but I think it becomes more of a, you know, like you just said, like it's who controls the narrative. There's a lot of that, but also, you know, if you've listened to any of our previous episodes, then you're aware of how we feel about cult and religion. Yeah. So although the thugs trace their origin back to Kali's fabled battle against man, I knew I was gonna fuck that one up too.
You're so close.
First of all, let me say I love so many of these names, Indian and like Pakistani names. I think they're super fucking cool.
They're beautiful.
They're way cooler than Rich and Steven. Let's be real.
Way cooler. Like, so I'm going to ask you too, but I'm like what is it? I'm like 3/4 Irish, or we jokingly say Price Hill Irish because we don't really know, you know what I mean? But the other quarter I'm Lebanese, and that's like always been the side I embrace because that shit's fucking cool. Yeah, you know. What are you?
Super mutt. I know that I'm at least a quarter Italian.
I could see that.
Let's see, because my grandfather's family came straight over from Italy. He was actually born here, but his parents were both Italian. And so my mom would be half Italian, which means I'm a quarter Italian. Everything else, I'm partially German, English, Scottish, sure, Irish and shit. I'm white. I'm white as fuck. That's what I am. I'm American and I'm white as fuck.
Yeah, buddy. That's funny.
I'm gonna try this name again because it looks so fucking cool. Raktabija.
I've heard that name too, and I don't think that's right, but you're doing it so much better than I.
It's Raktabija. It looks fucking cool, and I bet it sounds cool when someone pronounces it right, and they're not a fucking white kid.
Yeah, I feel like I should have talked.
School.
I should have talked to one of my brother John's buddies. Ace is Indian, and he would have helped me out with a lot of this.
Nice. So although they trace their origins back to Kali and their fabled battle against Raktabija, their foundation is closer to tantric cults, which depart from the Veda religious texts. So thugs consider themselves to be the children of Kali. They have been like created from her sweat. Which fucking gross. Number one. Number two, huge red flag. If you believe that your creation is also this was before Darwinism and the theory of evolution and whatever, but that's already a bad start. That it's like you think rough. That you are divine differently from others because you were created from the sweat of the god, or from any, directly from a god of any source.
Right. And even though sweat doesn't seem flattering, that's like how reverent they were of their goddess, but it's so much cooler than like Judaism or Christianity, but it's still all bullshit, and we're gonna talk about that in a minute.
In general, I think Hindu religions and Hindu gods and stuff like that, they're always the artwork is so beautiful and colorful, and the stories are just fucking buck wild. I think it's a lot more fun to read and research than any Christian stories.
Yeah, and I definitely, like, it's probably evident in this podcast, but it's hard for me to understand a lot of it just because it's so different than a lot of the religions I'm used to reading about, but it's so, just so beautiful, like, especially the art, man. That's big for both of us, I know. But, so we're going to talk about Kali for a sec. She is believed to be the destroyer of evil spirits and the preserver of devotees. She is close to Shiva, and her name derives from Kala, from the Sanskrit words for dark or time, which is kind of an interesting combination.
Yeah.
But Kala also means black or female? As a
black female.
Okay. Is she depicted... Not she like, often is depicted with black skin.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And it should be specified, not like black African. It's,
right.
They literally mean black, as in like it's like a yin and yang thing.
Right. Dude, some of my favorite, I mean, you've seen in my art every now and again, but I love paintings of Kali.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Here.
Shiva, so Kala means black female opposed to Shiva, who is white. Kali is often portrayed standing on the inert form of her consort Shiva. She is sometimes in the company of she-demons. Kali's 8 arms hold weapons and the severed heads of demon. I've also seen it just as regular men.
Yeah. Like the necklace of heads. Yeah.
Dude, it's so cool. So the objects held by Kali symbolize both her creative and destructive power, which is important. Kali demonstrates the ambivalence of deity, which according to Hindu tradition manifests itself in the unending cycle of life, death, creation, and destruction. And that's really plays into the belief of the Thuggees, that cycle of life and death.
Yeah. I think one of the coolest things about Indian religion is like they also have like their Holy Trinity. So if for people that don't know, the Hindu, they have Brahma is the creator, they have Vishnu the preserver, and Shiva is the destroyer. So you have your creation, your destroyer, and the preserver, or like the balance, if you will. So then there would be since Shiva is the destroyer, this would be the alt of Shiva.
Black hat.
Yeah, so like they, are depicted a lot of times as one or the other. And usually even like when Shiva's depicted, they depict them standing on top of Kali. So there's, a lot of cool things in that. Another fun thing that I thought was really cool about religion and the Hindu religion was because their gods take so many different forms in their religion, that it's a practice in Hindu culture to you treat guests, you treat people with the idea that, like, especially when you invite them into your home or something like that, you treat them as if they could be a form of God. They could be a god in disguise or something like that.
That's really cool.
And it's like, okay, that's if you're gonna if you've picked the cherry pick the good parts of religions, that's a cool thing.
Yeah.
No,
I totally agree with that. I really like what you said about, I find it interesting about what you said about the Trinity is like create, destroy, preserve.
Yeah.
That's like so close to Nietzsche's primary principles. One of his big theories in Ubermensch and that kind of shit is create, destroy, overcome. And I've read a lot of his stuff, and that particular theory has influenced me a lot, where you create what you want in the world, destroy what you hate in the world, and then continue to overcome and evolve yourself, which is slightly different than the preserve, but it takes a very similar meaning in the context.
Yeah. You could even say that, instead of preserve, it's persevere.
Yeah.
In that way. So, according to colonial sources, thugs believe that they played a positive role in saving human lives. So, without the thugs' sacred sacrifices, Kali might have destroyed all of mankind. And that's what they believed. One of the quotes attributed to the Thuggee is, "God is all in all, for good and evil."
Which is insanity.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, though, too. There's so many fucking cool and interesting things in religion that, like, I know we both appreciate. And as, like, metal or, like, weird and interesting, it's like it's so twisted and obviously flawed, too.
Yeah, it's like this is a really cool story, and it's a really cool idea, but, like, you don't have to believe in the shit, though.
Right. Or
it's like Norse mythology and shit. It's like, it's so brutal and fucking wild, but, like, you don't have to believe it's real to think it's cool and a fun idea. I don't know.
Yeah, or like so many times in this episode, like I've said it's fucking cool and metal what they're doing, and it's like I really do feel that way, but the reality is like they've killed so many fucking people for like gold. Like
right. Like you're not going to go out and do it. Like you don't encourage people to go out and do it. The concept is fucking brutal and cool in that way.
Right, but even if I did like really encourage shit like that, it's like their reasons for it are so garbage or like justified by religious bullshit.
Yeah.
And
in the name of God.
It's just really amazing what people can justify in the name of God, because he works in such mysterious fucking ways. I can't stand it, man.
He do, Steven. He do.
So, I mean, I just don't see, like, you could say they're more greed-oriented opposed to, like, true believers, like the Christian Crusade kind of shit, but, like, it's all the same. I don't see what they're doing is any different than other religious garbage. It's all bullshit in the name of God, and at least the Thuggee are really fucking brutal. You know?
At least
I appreciate.
At least the story's more metal.
Yeah.
The idea. I think this once again goes back to who's writing the narrative, and if the Christian Crusades, it's written with. I mean, even in the horror stories, it's written with like an honorific kind of story, like it's supposed to be honorable in some way, and like it wasn't a complete massacre, and it wasn't brutal and awful.
Yeah, in one of the research sessions for something else, didn't you come across something where they were talking about like how overjoyed they were by all the
they said
the red Muslim blood.
It was a sight to behold for all God-loving citizens or God-loving Christians, and to see the streets run red with blood of Muslims and Jews. It's like it's a quote.
Yeah, dude, it's like these groups in general, they have to find any way possible to justify the horrific shit they do.
Yeah.
And God is a real good one for that, you know? It's...
Well, you can't prove that God doesn't exist, Steven.
Right. And to be fair, like, a lot of the Thuggee, like, they're made up of people with varying religious belief. Not all of them believe in Kali, not all of them are Hindu, not all of them are Muslim. They're all Thuggee, but their beliefs may be totally independent. But it is a thing where, like, you see time and time again through groups like this or through people who murder throughout history. They're all like 75% of the time there's the God connection. Yeah. And it's very terrible.
It's the thing is, like, people say, like, well, they're not true believers of God. It's like they don't. It's like, well, but they in their head they are. It's like because they, you know, number one, there's so many different sects of each different religion, but also, you know, like these people believe this thing because they were either taught it or they, you know, derived it this way because that's the way they interpreted, you know, the text, and that's how they took it in that direction. And it's, I feel like I keep bringing it back to, you know, religion, back to the Trump shit. But, you know, it's the same thing with them. Like, they believed a certain fiction because they, you know, they were told this, and they were like, oh, the people that, you know, rioted in the Capitol, they weren't real, you know, Trump supporters. You know, they were, you know, they don't represent us. And it's like, no, they absolutely fucking do. They represent the absolute fucking worst of you that decided that this is the shit of all the things that were worth being upset about enough to storm, you know, a government facility over the last 50 years at least. Like that was the thing, was that, you know, this lie with no evidence, not a single fucking, you know, piece of proof to say that, you know, there is a fraud in the election. It's like, there's no, if there had been proof and like that this was true, honestly, if there was absolutely, you know, definitely some proof that like some shit went down, yeah, for all reasons, that's a good reason. But there wasn't.
Honestly, man, I think there's always shit going down. We like, God, I don't want this to sound in support of them at all because I fucking hate them. But there is a major problem with the security of voting machines, and it's like, if anything, you would think that would have been the argument they made more instead of the other shit. But whether it's fucking I mean, QAnon shit is definitely like a fucking cult.
Yeah, that's absolutely a cult.
I've spent so much time getting in deep into Q because it is wild. But whether it's like QAnon, religion, whatever, it's what I don't understand is like, why do people want to be a part of a group where other people do things in the name of, like,
yeah, that it, and it's it's supported. Right? Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, we discussed with the, you know, the Catholicism. It's like the people that, you know, the core of the Catholic Church does, you know, committed these atrocities. It's like, how can you stand by and say, oh, I support this, and you know, people can say like, well, you know, that was so long ago. It's like, no, it's the same thing though. It's the same group of people. They like, believe the same shit.
Or it's just like, why would you want to be a part of? To me, it would be so risky to be part of a group like that because of what other people are going to do in the name of your group.
Yeah,
like I just don't fucking get it. Like, I think
it's like being an American and being embarrassed to be an American right now. I mean, you know, all the time. But more particularly lately.
That's why I don't think of myself as American. I don't want to be a part of a group. Yeah. Like, you got to be strong enough to be on your own.
So people,
that's all life is. It's like,
it's just
learning to be alone.
Yeah,
strong on your own.
When people would ask me like where I'm, you know, they think I came from Florida, and it's like I'd always be quick to say like, where, you know, when they say where are you from, I'd say, oh, I'm from Cincinnati. You know, I grew in there, like, oh yeah. I was like, yeah, I just came up here from Florida though. I spent a couple years down there because I don't want them to get the impression that I'm from Florida. Because I don't want them to attribute, you know, my name with that.
Nasty natty, baby.
That nasty natty boy. I'll wear that on my, I'll wear that till I die. I'm cool with that.
513 cradle to grave.
And like we were saying, some of the, you know, the different thugs, you know, thuggies would, even if they had different religions, like most of them were Hindu, but there were Muslim thugs, and they retained their monotheistic faith. They just substituted, Bhawani for a spirit subordinate of Allah. So a Muslim thug that was caught by Suleiman said, "In my heart, I take the name of God when I strangle a man, saying, 'Thou God and ruler.'" So he said, I do not pray to Banawi, but I worship her.
This is so confusing.
Yeah.
Because it is confusing.
Yeah, it's very confusing. So,
it's like a mix of different faiths.
It's like, they would justify their actions by saying like, well, I don't pray to this God, but I do worship them. Like, it's like, I give them my praise. And it's like, and if you're in a monotheistic faith, I'm not completely sure about Muslim, but I know especially in most other monotheistic faiths, like they're not into the false idol shit. And I'm pretty sure Muslims are no different, that, to worship a false prophet is, that's like their whole thing with like Jews and Christians. It's like they don't get along that way because they have false prophet. I'm not sure if, I guess it's not, I think I guess with Jews, because Jews don't recognize their prophet, because they don't really have one besides God. So anyways,
I don't think that's true.
Well, I might not know enough about that one. I thought
I don't either, but like Jesus is still a prophet to the Jews. It's just he's not.
They don't consider him to be the son of God, or the second coming of God.
I'm not sure about the son of God part, but correct that they don't think he
is God incarnate.
Right. He was just an important prophet to them. But the main guy is still coming.
Right.
Which
the big man up top.
Yeah, dude, for whatever reason, and maybe it's just a Catholic bias, because like I fucking hate the Catholic Church. I'm not Catholic, but I was raised Catholic, and the Catholics for some reason always like think so much less of the Jews compared to other religions. Mm-hmm. I feel like, but I really don't like that that their religion, a large part of it is waiting for the real prophet, like waiting for God, and like for whatever reason that really bothers me. I appreciate the idea of that it already happened, and we have to like do shit right better than we're still waiting.
Yeah.
I don't know. God, this sounds really bad out of context.
No, I'm down with that, because it's like because of course the return is always like, well, that's how they test your faith, and it's like, that's fucking stupid though. It's like, how many lifetimes, how many generations, do you have to wait before you have, you can find peace, or you can find comfort in knowing that you were right. You'll never fucking know until you die. It's fucking stupid. Fuck religion. But we're definitely fuck religion all day.
Yeah, man. We need to do an afterlife episode coming up.
Oh yes, I'm into that.
And we're at the end of this too. We're going to talk about the next episode, because we had some ideas that I'm very excited about. Yeah. So let's talk at the end.
All right.
I'll pick back up at
I didn't finish my statement. Thank you very much, sir.
I was going to let it go because there were so many words that I couldn't pronounce.
yeah, I got it.
Okay.
I got this one. So like I said, they said like, we don't pray to this God, but I do worship them. So they agreed to, some of the Muslim thugs that agreed to testify for Suleiman said they assimilated Bhavani with the Islamic prophet Muhammad's daughter Fatima, who killed Rakhtobjabah and started the practice of Thuggee, which is...
So that's another theory, right?
Yeah, that's another theory about the origin of their story. It's like it started, from the Islamic prophet's daughter, that started the Thuggee cult. So that's
Interesting.
just another whole, can of worms, which, whether they believe, that's the thing. Here's the thing is like whether they believed that or this is what they said to them because they, were trying to justify it to themselves, or like what they believed it, for, to justify their own actions and still keep their religion somehow. Or if this was, built through the narrative of, or, lost or somehow changed in translation of how, that originated.
Yeah. So, and it's largely like attributed that the killing of the Thuggees is like largely religious based.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally don't think that's so much true, but
Right.
a lot of historians think that the thugs had no religious motives to kill.
Right.
That's kind of the story that was told about them, or maybe that was used to justify some things, but that really wasn't what was going on. This is like, they were a highway gang, just needed fucking money. I don't sure there were religious aspects and elements present among the thugs, but that wasn't what it was about, I think.
I think it would make more sense to me to think that they used these, the religion to recruit people, to bring new people in into their system, because it's, that's religions have been doing that for years, to brainwash people by saying like, well, you have to do this, you have to do this or, we're all going to die, or there will be consequences, like it's the thing with, Christianity is like, if you don't worship God, this God in this way, and from this book, then you're going to spend
forever.
You're going to burn for forever in hell. You're going to be tortured and burned forever in hell. And it's like that. It's like it's not an immediate consequence. So you can't, disprove it. They can't disprove it, but it sets that fear in their head. And someone that's not, intelligent enough is going to be like, oh, fuck, I guess I need to do this.
Yeah, there so much religion is control stuff. Have you gone into any of the mushroom theories of religion? Like the first churches were mushroom based?
No.
Kind of stuff. Dude, there's some really cool. All right, I'm writing that down.
Yeah, write that down too. Like when you say mushrooms, you mean like mushrooms?
Yeah, trippy mushrooms.
Okay.
Psilocybin. Because like you think of communion, like the first, like in Catholicism, Christian, you're eating a piece of God, you're bringing together. Like the first times that would have happened would have like people get together, you're in your cave, you begin together for food and shit. But we know for sure that psilocybin has played a massive role in history.
Oh yeah.
And like there were like people would meet for that. Like you'd get together and pass the body of Christ, your mushrooms to everybody. And that, remember how we were talking about I think we mentioned in the cooking episode how like the human brain at some point it grew in size like way quicker than the normal pace, and that's what we think helped evolve us from primate to human. And we were talking about how like a lot of that could have been the invent of fire and protein that helped our brains grow differently. And that's why we evolved so fast. But there's also a lot of theories on it could have been at the same time around fire, or shortly after. Maybe they coincided, but maybe it's separate. Maybe it was large doses of psychedelics that changed our brain wiring and led our brains to evolving so much quicker. And I don't know how much I prescribe to these things, but there's a lot of very compelling research in the role of mushrooms and religion in the early churches.
That's definitely supported by some of the like pagan religions and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Pagan medicine, as they called it, using herbs and using, medicinal foods that, you can find and forage for. to cure diseases that a lot of, Christians would turn down because, that's paganish. That's, devil shit. It's like it's given to you by God on this earth for you to have.
Right.
So it's like, but mixing it up and doing things with it was, the devil's work, the devil's food.
That devil's lettuce. Last thing, I'm pretty sure you know this one. The Vikings and mushrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was their thing. They get fucked up on mushrooms and raid. So, sorry, real quick. Back to attributing religion. So a lot of the beliefs of the Thuggees, they weren't that different than the general population of the Indian subcontinent. But they may have attributed a lot of their success or failure to the supernatural powers. So their beliefs weren't abnormal, but they attributed to these powers. So it mimics a lot of legend and folklore from that period.
Yeah. And it's easier to understand why the Thuggee existed during this time when we understand what was happening in India, which is now why we unfortunately have to talk about the British.
Fuck the British Empire, fuck imperialism, fuck the British government as a whole to this day.
Ditto. So the British found out about the Thuggee for the first time in India in 1807. So we're going to rewind a bit and we're going to explain what was happening in India at the time and why the fuck it even matters what the British thought about the Thuggees.
Yeah, and I really felt we needed to include this because I knew about this, but I didn't really fully understand to what extent. And it's very relevant in understanding what's going on in India at the time, why the Thuggees existed, why they were allowed to exist, and just the whole setting. So we're rewinding back to the European scramble for colonies in Asia. So after the Portuguese first rounded the Cape of Good Hope on Africa's southern tip in 1488, opening sea lanes to the Far East by piracy on ancient trade lines in the Indian Ocean, the European powers strove to acquire Asian trading posts of their own. So this is when the whole area is starting to change because European powers are trying to come in for trade. So for centuries, what is that? I'm sorry. I can't read that. Viennese had controlled the European branch of the Silk Road, reaping enormous profits from the sale of silk, spices, fine china, and precious metals, all the cool shit. The Viennese monopoly ended with the establishment of European incursions in the sea trade. At first, the European powers in Asia were solely interested in trade, but over time they became more interested in acquiring territory. No surprise there. Land is power.
Yeah.
They needed a position in these areas so they could make more fucking money and control the people.
Yeah.
Among the nations looking for a piece of this action was Britain.
Fuck. Just all the shit, the crazy fighting and stealing of territories that, white people in general.
Yeah.
Of many people, but of white people especially, it's, of course, it's at the base of every story in history.
Fucking evil shit.
Yeah. So, to go on from that, we're going to talk about the Battle of Plassey. Britain had been trading with India since about 1600, but it didn't begin to seize large sections of land until 1757 after the Battle of Plassey. The battle pitted 3,000 soldiers of the British East India Trading Company against the 50,000 strong army of the young Nawab of Bengal, Siraj, and Dowla, and his French East India Company allies. So these are it's basically the British versus the French plus a bunch of allies from Indian and Middle Eastern nations.
Was it the French?
It says, and his French East India Company allies.
Interesting. Was the East India Company French? Because the name of it.
I was under the impression that the East India Company was British.
Yes.
And they had a French section or sector or whatnot, if you will. See, we don't know what the fuck we're talking about here. And sometimes
we just do the best we can.
Sometimes we do the best we can with the resources that we're given. So, we're bound to have mistakes and things be wrong. So
I just typed who owned the East India Company. And it gave me one dude's name.
Oh, good.
Of like 30 people. So to clarify, it was an English and later British joint stock company founded in 1600.
Okay.
It was formed to trade in the Indian Ocean region, initially with the East Indies. Okay. So I just got confused about the French part. That's all.
Yeah, I saw that in there too. I assumed it was just because the French also wanted that territory.
I'm sure, yeah.
So the fighting began, once again, let me recap this part. 3,000 versus 50,000. Okay, we'll start there. Fighting began in the morning of June 3rd, 1757. Heavy rains spoiled the cannon powder. The British covered theirs so it didn't get destroyed. So it led to their defeat. So they only lost about 500 troops. Britain only lost about 22. But the 3,000 British soldiers beat the Nawab of Bengal and his army of 50,000 strong. The Britain seized the modern equivalent of about $5 million from the Bengali treasury and used it to finance further expansion, as white people do.
So it's fair to say, like, there were so many less British soldiers, but they won because of the cannons.
Yeah.
That was all technology, basically.
Yeah. So they literally, their shit got rained on. The cannon powder got rained on. So
my God.
They both had the cannons, but they, hadn't covered their shit before the day before, so they couldn't use them.
Jesus. And the British only lost 22. There's gotta be more reasons that I wonder if it's really that simple that their shit just got rained on, or if the British had like a better setup, like there was more money involved.
That's also possibly true, but the difference in numbers there is the part that makes me think that, boy, they really didn't even get that far into it before they realized, man, we're fucked.
Yeah.
And that's just, I realized I made it sound like, 500, they only lost 500 people and the Britons only lost 22. And like, it's still 522 people, but that's, it's out of,
by comparison.
Yeah. By comparison of what it could have been, which was an absolute fucking bloodbath.
Yeah. That's a massacre.
Yeah. So
this kind of gets back to India under the East India Company after the Battle of Plassey. So the East India Company was primarily interested in the trade of cotton, silk, tea, opium. But after this battle, it functioned as the military authority in growing sections of India as well.
Mm-hmm.
So by the British winning this, the East India Company started to take root and control over India trade and land as a whole. So by 1770, heavy company taxation and other policies had left millions of Bengalis impoverished. While British soldiers and traders made their fortunes, the Indians starved. And between 1770 and 1773, about 10 million fucking people, 1/3 of the population, died of famine in Bengal.
White people.
Whoa. Dude, man. Oh my God. I was going to bring up some other horrible tragedy, but I think this is enough. At the time, the Indians were barred from holding high office in their own land. Oh, shit. I need to read that again. At this time, Indians were barred from holding high office in their own land. That is brutal.
Yeah.
The British considered them inherently corrupt and untrustworthy.
Yep.
So they just stole their fucking country, basically.
They set up shop in their country and said, you guys can't manage this. It's us now. And they tried, and they said no.
And for some perspective, this is like kind of what the world was at the time.
Okay.
It doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it okay, but everyone's fighting for power.
Yeah.
But India seemed very focused on trade. And that is such a more beautiful concept than conquer, you know?
Yeah.
So in 1809, the British Empire began an effort to suppress the Thuggee. And that's kind of where the start of the end, you know?
So they came in, they fought for the territory and basically the keys to the government, and they're now holding territory. So now they have an interest, an invested interest in controlling the crime in the area.
Right.
So the British generally took the view that the Thuggee was a type of ritual murder practiced by the worshippers of Kali. Sleeman's view of it is like an aberrant faith, was based on the contemporary British view that Hinduism was a despicable and immoral faith founded on idol worship. This phenomenon was traced back to the Muslim conquest of India. It suggests links to the Hindu mythology. Charles Trevelyan, however, he insists that it's like a deviant sect, so it's not Hinduism. They considered themselves to be representatives of the essence of Hinduism, that he considered evil and false.
Fuck you, Charles.
Yeah, fuck you, Charles. Kali's worship by thugs, both Muslim and Hindus, was emphasized by the British. Sleeman blamed it on the Indian rulers. So he's saying it's like from a top-down thing, and this is why the British need to be in control over here, because they're all bandits, and they all support it, and they're all, these idol worshippers, which, because Christians aren't idol worshippers at all.
Right, and it's both of the major religions at fault. They're both fucking evil.
Yeah.
You can't control your people. It's we're putting things law and fucking order.
Yeah.
Dude, I fucking hate that phrase. So
that was an issue on my side. Sorry about that.
You're good.
So the British authorities had occasionally captured and prosecuted thugs. However, Sleeman was the first to realize that he could get information from some of these thuggies that he could use to track and identify other thugs in a different district. His first major breakthrough was the capture of Faringa, who persuaded to give evidence. Faringa's story was the basis of the successful 1839 novel Confessions of a Thug. Faringa brought Sleeman a mass grave with a mass grave with 100 bodies. Told him the circumstances of the murders and named the thugs who committed them. So fucking snitched, sold them all up sea.
And that's true. He really did bring him to that mass grave.
Yeah.
So
I saw a lot of things about them turning themselves in because they saw it as it's religious. When they saw it as like a religious act, and then they said, well, we did do that. Yeah, absolutely. So whatever happens to us, Kali will stand by us. It's Kali is going to, protect us, or we will receive, their blessing, or, whatnot.
Only God can judge me.
Right.
Bro. Fuck out of here. So I did look into Confessions of the Thug. I was reading that a little bit, and the accounts were very interesting. And it would be awesome if they were true, but there's so much reason for that book to have been sensationalized. It's hard that book. Sorry, I think a lot of it was fake, or it just really played up. Yeah, because this is fucking Sleeman caught the dude, and we're making money off a book now. Basically,
exactly.
This book was a bestseller kind of deal. It informed other people of how to perceive the Thuggee.
Yeah.
So after initial investigations confirmed what was said in Confessions of a Thug, Sleeman began an extensive campaign using profiling and intelligence. It's weird when you see profiling used like way back in history, right?
But also, I was going to say using profiling and intelligence in the same sentence.
Well, dude, that's the thing is like profiling has got a bad rap.
Right.
In a sense, because there's ethical and unethical profiling. Yeah. And when it's like, referred negatively, we're only speaking about the unethical.
Right. So, like, I mean, like, yeah, you can look at somebody and, you know, or look at a group of people and tell, more importantly, look at one person and you can tell, like, oh, maybe I don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt right off the bat. Doesn't mean you arrest them right off the bat.
Right. You know? And it doesn't even, this is getting risky. But cops are fucking assholes. Yeah. And just because you have an inclination or like you see somebody with tattoos, right? That's not enough to have an intelligent profile, right? But let's say you see tattoos that depict some gang shit. That still shouldn't be enough that you make a decision on how you treat that person.
Right.
But it does give you some sort of an idea of what that person's up to. You know, it depends on what you do with the information. And that's been, you know.
Make sure they pass the vibe check, you know.
Yeah, but that's been such a fucking huge problem. It's, you know. But there's a difference between profiling and object racism.
Yeah, so I made that joke knowing that, and I realized afterward that people are going to hear this and they're going to not understand that what I'm saying is somewhat ironic.
I think we got there.
Yeah.
So Sleeman was made the superintendent of the Thuggee and City Department in 1835. So this is when he became the superintendent of the Thuggee police.
Yeah, boy.
Woo!
Thug cop.
Now, this dude, he sounds like he was kind of smart, but he's definitely an asshole. But all right, objectively, like, all these bandits murdering people is a problem.
Right.
Like, there's, I don't know.
Something probably needed to be done about this.
Yeah,
I always
side with the criminal over the cops. Yeah. It's just hard not to. So a sect of the Indian government first established by the East India Company in, that's what his department was. It was actually established by the East India Company. So, City was a type of organized banditry. Distinguished from thugs, most notably by its open practice and due to the fact that murder was not an intrinsic element of their modus operandi. Gotcha. So, Sleeman was the superintendent of the Thuggee and City departments.
Yes.
Because there were, like, different types of robbers.
Yeah, there's multiple types of bandits. But the thugs they stood out among all of them.
Because they were deceptive, and it seems like a way bigger thing.
Right.
That's all you.
Sleeman developed elaborate intelligent techniques that predated similar methods in Europe and the U.S. by like decades. Records were made that the accused were given prisoner numbers against which, like, their names, their residence, the fellow thugs, criminal acts for which they were blamed were all noted. So they had all these records on them. And once again, this is where there's a lot of this is, needed for, there's citation needed for a lot of these notes. And there's a lot of, things that aren't completely solid information because it depends on who writes the narrative here.
But I do think it's fair to say Sleeman's techniques at the time.
Yeah.
Like
he
just establishing who a particular Thuggee consorted with or whatever, like that. There was more due diligence in the intelligence.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was mostly getting to like where they said the records show that a lot of the thugs' names were similar. They lacked surnames since the Thuggee naming convention was to use the name of their tribe and job assignments in the gangs, which I'm not super sure on that because I hadn't seen that anywhere else besides this one source.
Well, we do know they assumed names a lot. Like it might have been a way of like gang names type shit. Or a way to disguise their names from outsiders. There's something to that.
So accurate recording was also difficult because the thugs adopted so many aliases, with both the Muslim and Hindu thugs often posing as members of the other religion. The thug Ghulam Hussein, though he thought he said that Muslims and Hindus ate together, or eating together. Sorry, yes, they avoided eating together, but that was not the case for drinking and smoking. So, like, because they're separate religions, they couldn't sit at the same fucking dinner table, but they would drink and smoke together, which is.
That's like a common thing too between different groups where like we can't break bread, but when it's time to party, it's on.
Right, exactly. Like what the fuck?
Yeah. It's just just make good, eat and smoke.
Yeah. Smoke while you eat.
There you go. I used to do that all the time. That gets gross quick.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds fucking terrible.
You like still got smoke coming out of your lungs. And you're like eating a piece of bread.
Ugh. Ugh. It just tastes like ash in my mouth. Ugh.
So this campaign against the Thuggees relied heavily on the captured Thuggees' information, like the Thuggees that became informants, which is unfortunate and not quite as OG thug life as we'd like to imagine, but these informants were offered protection on the condition that they told everything they knew to Sleeman's dudes. So, according to historians, these historians used documents in the UK archives, which said suspects were subject to bench trials before English judges. I read that bad. So, these Thuggee were often sent to trials before an English judge.
Yeah.
And though the trials were lacking by later standards, such as like they weren't allowed legal representation.
Right.
And I don't know. To me, that doesn't seem that crazy for the time.
Right.
It's definitely fucked up, but like lawyers weren't always a thing either. But the Thuggees were conducted with care to protocols of the time. That's kind of the point. While most suspects were convicted, the court seemed generally interested in finding the truth and rejected a minority of allegations due to mistaken identity or insufficient evidence. So the courts really wanted these dudes. It didn't matter if the identity of the person might not be right or there wasn't enough evidence. They're going to convict.
Right.
Even by later standards, the evidence of guilt for many of the thugs was overwhelming. So they really did have a lot of evidence on these dudes too. It wasn't
right. There's fucking, they managed to dig grave setups so like the bodies, didn't decompose at a certain rate, so there's fucking piles of shit. The mass graves and shit were crazy.
Yeah, so they had a lot of evidence, but even if they didn't have it, they're convicted.
Yeah. And because they used boats to dispose of their victims, the river thugs were able to evade the British authorities for some time after the compatriots on land were suppressed. They were ultimately they were betrayed by some of their own teammates. So they weren't hunted down until 1836. So, several decades went by before they, were even discovered and chased after on that. Excuse me, by that.
It's always somebody that snitches. At least they didn't have to worry about fucking wiretaps back then. But there's always one dude that snitches, man.
Like they get caught and they're like, well, we'll protect you. We'll take care of you. It's like get them motherfuckers out there on the water. They're throwing the bodies out to crocodiles and shit. Those fuckers are crazy.
Yeah, they're way crazier than me. So during Sleeman's initial operations, more than 1,400 thugs were imprisoned for life or hung. I would like to know how many were hung. I'm guessing it was more than weren't. But it's so crazy. Like, in his book, he talks about how they catch and probably kill at least 1,400, but like they never paid for their crimes.
Yeah.
So that's, whatever. The British controlled informers and centralized management of intelligence operations, and they opened tight security of the secrecy of the Thuggee organization. So they had such counterintelligence, they really got into the Thuggees and decimated them.
So like you said, it kills me that especially in the same book, that the accounts varied so crazy kind of back and forth, especially on the how the justice that was reaped. Right. I'm doing air quotes real big. I just think that's pretty wild.
Yeah, there's no hard numbers. It's like they had such good intelligence, but they don't even know how to like report the statistics of how successful they were catching these dudes, or like how many they killed, or like how big of a problem this really was. It was more like, they were taking control of India. These dudes were the problem, and we're going to kill them all, Yeah. That's how I think it was, at least.
So we're going to have a guest in the studio today. We're going to get his opinion on it. Mark Twain.
Cheers, mate. Bloke, blimey.
Oh, I thought that was supposed to be an Australian accent at first because you said mate. I was like, Mark Twain wasn't Australian, I don't think. I don't think that's right, bud.
I don't know. But one of my favorite quotes was Mark Twain saying, if I could die anywhere during the apocalypse, it would be Cincinnati because everything happens there 10 years late.
Damn right.
But fuck Mark Twain.
Fuck Mark Twain, though.
And this is why.
So Mark Twain wrote about an 1839 government report by William Henry Sleeman. Then this is his quote. There's one very striking thing which I wish to call attention to. You have surmised from the listed callings followed by the victims of the thugs that nobody could travel the Indian roads unprotected and live to get through. That the thugs respected no quality, no vocation, no religion, nobody. That they killed every unarmed man that came in their way. That is wholly true. Mark Twain continued to say, if there ever was an unpromising task, if there ever was an unpromising task, if there ever was a hopeless task in the world, surely it was offered here, the task of conquering the Thuggee. But that little handful of English officials in India set their sturdy and confident grip upon it and ripped it out, root and branch.
So yeah, fuck Mark Twain.
Fuck Mark Twain.
I don't know, man. That's
old dandy ass motherfucker.
Dandy, man. How can you? I don't know. I just wouldn't want to write that way about exterminating any group of people, including criminals.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
I get it. The thing is, I guess I look at it from a different perspective entirely than people of this time in general would. And it's that the religious bullshit is fucking crazy and people need to put a control on that. But also, there's so many, the issues that led up to all these arrests and with the, fighting over territories and shit like that. And like, there's so many politics involved, even with, these arrests and stuff. And it's just not, I don't know. It just seems fucky to me.
Yeah. I get kind of what you're saying. Like if Mark Twain was speaking about the Nazis right now, like the Nazis are killing people, we need to uproot them. It would be like, yeah, fuck yeah, Mark Twain. It's like, there's something romantic about the Thuggees,
Yeah.
And there's a bias on our part for sure.
Well, because I think the difference was the Thuggees weren't out for genocide. They didn't have an agenda in that route. It was more or less, somewhat of a survival thing. Sure, there was greed involved as well, but it's a way of life.
Right. It's easier to understand the Thuggees.
Yeah.
For me, at least. I don't know.
It wasn't about maintaining, gaining and maintaining more control. It was about gaining and maintaining supplies and things to get through life.
Yeah, and I'm sure there were ambitions for control and stuff,
Yeah.
but it's different because it's not it's probably a bad parallel, but compared to the Nazis, there's a difference. It's not a hate group where they're hating and killing people.
Right.
It's a survival group. This is an adaptation to survive and thrive. And
at the very worst, then they're religious zealots, and then then they are fuck them. Then I'm down. I'm down with that train of thought. That if they are that if the whole thing was like a crazy religious, like they're murdering people for God, and they actually were, then
right.
That's,
and there's probably was a mix too. I bet it was both, but
I'm still down to say fuck Mark Twain though.
Yeah,
just cause
fuck Mark Twain. So there we had Mark Twain's quote. Now we're gonna quote a British captain, George Vallancey, as he reflects on the Thuggee. He said, "The day that sees this far-spread evil completely eradicated from India and known only in name will greatly tend to immortalize British rule in the East." So, and I looked into his background information, and it's funny because he was fucking from Ireland, and he later became British, and he's like, yeah, fuck the Thuggees, we need to make British immortal. You know what I mean? Like, it's all fucking government power shit.
Yeah, fuck. Well, the British made him a captain, so...
Yeah.
Fucking crazy shit.
He looks so fancy in his goofy clothes.
Well, it depends on the time too. But he could have been, I guess, if it was mid 1800s, then did they wear the frilly neck shit? The frilly, yeah, whatever. Fucking
pretty sure
bullshit.
He was wigged up too.
Wigged up.
Wigged up.
So by the by the 1870s, thug cult was essentially extinct. But the history of the Thuggee led to the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871. Although the Criminal Tribes Act was repealed at Indian independence, the tribes considered criminal still exist in India. The Thuggee in... how did you pronounce this word?
Daosity?
Daosity.
Yeah.
The Thuggee and Daosity Department remained in existence until 1904, when it was replaced by the Central Criminal Intelligence Department.
Sid.
That Sid, boy.
Woo. So, I'd like to think the Thuggee may still exist, even if it's like very small, secret numbers. But the reality is they were most likely exterminated by the British. But their impact like continues on because they led to these like criminal tribe laws and shit that are still active today, or their predecessors are still active today. But this is where some of it gets kind of weird. This is where the grain of salt part comes in, and I think we understand why at this time. But we'll get into it a little bit more.
Do you wanna begin this section here?
Yeah, sure. Contemporary scholars have become increasingly skeptical of the Thuggee concept and have even questioned the existence of such phenomenon. Now, that seems ridiculous.
Right.
It existed for sure. We don't know to what extent. The colonial British representation of the Thuggee is held by some critics to be full of inconsistencies and exaggerations. However, the more radical critics in this camp have themselves been criticized for focusing overly on British perceptions of the Thuggee rather than on historical accuracy of primary source documents. Because there's a lot of fucking documents, like by Sleeman even. I mean, a lot of people wrote about what was happening in India, and there was a lot of documentation of the Thuggee's existence before the British were involved. Numerous historians have described Thuggee as basically an invention of the British colonial regime, and I don't think that's true. I think perceptions were altered, but it wasn't invented.
What you're saying is you want to believe.
I want to believe.
Put the little UFO on it and put that on a t-shirt. Oh, excuse me. This name is absolutely buck wild.
Dude, how many words is that?
There's a lot of bullshit going on in here.
You want me to try?
Yeah, I want you to try that one. This is it's French.
Maritime van Vokeners of École Pratique des Hautes Etudes, right?
All of that was wrong and bad. I'll tell you now. I'll tell you right now. You didn't nail it, bud. But
I had it.
There's no way I'm gonna do better. So this French asshole. Actually, I don't know if he's an asshole yet. Because I actually didn't. You did this research part. I haven't read this one yet. He writes that the evidence for a thug cult in the 19th century was the product of colonial imagining arising from the British fear of the little-known interior of India, as well as limited understanding of the religious and social practices of its inhabitants. For as much is known about the Thuggees, as much is unknown. So it's hard to say to what extent the narrative has been altered for political reasons by the British Empire. One example of this is the alleged Thug Kings.
Oh, dude, I'm so excited for these dudes.
So this is just a sidebar here because I only saw the one one homeboy here.
He was the big one.
Yeah. The big baddie.
Yeah, and these are like the examples of the legend of like Thuggee folklore. So they had these kings. There weren't many of them, but over the years there definitely were some. But there was this dude named Buhram, also known as Buhram Jamedar, and the King of Thugs. He was a leader of the Thuggee cult, active in north-central India during the late 18th and early 19th century, and is often cited as one of the world's most prolific serial killers. Now, I had heard of him before I knew about the Thuggee.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, he has, his legend has made it through history. Like, they really do believe, they don't know the exact numbers, but they know this dude, like, his name survived because he killed a lot of fucking people. They think he may have been involved in up to 931 murders. With practiced skill, he could cast this sash so that it caused the medallion on its end to land on the Adam's apple of his victims, adding to the pressure to the throat of when he strangled them. So this dude, like, mastered his sash and was just strangling people.
That's
like,
so
hundreds.
fucking wild.
Dude, that's some Thug King
He
shit.
killed more people than the amount of people that died in that war over territory.
Yeah, with his bare hands.
Yeah. Jesus.
That's wild.
Fuck.
Yeah.
So we'll never know the extent of the murderous activities of the thugs. Estimated death by the Thuggees were as high as 40,000 a year.
Bro, that's
yeah,
that's so high,
fucking many.
But I see it as fully possible.
Yeah. Many people believe that over 2 million people have died at the hands of thugs. The accomplishment and secrecy of such large numbers of deaths caused by the Thuggees was a result of their well-organized and highly secret fraternity. So greatly aiding Thuggee's success was the lack of any central authority powerful enough to put an end to their ritual murder.
Right. Man. This is a wild fucking story. So, while the majority of the Thuggee might be gone today, their name lives on. And I think it's so interesting to know that story in the context of what we call thug or thugs today,
Yeah.
It's all from the Thuggee. And there's a lot of power and, I don't know.
So this is where Steven's gonna edit in the song "Thugs Get Lonely Too" with Tupac and Tech 9.
Now, I like Tech. I don't like a lot of what he's doing, but I don't like Tupac. I'm gonna end Thug Life episode with saying I don't like Tupac.
Oh yeah, no, fucking all day, B.I.G.
Really?
Yeah, I fuck with Biggie.
I don't like him either. I would have liked him at the time.
Okay. So let's end this extremely dramatic episode about these people, and I need to know Tupac or Biggie.
I go Tupac over Biggie, but
okay,
because I like 3 songs by Tupac, but neither of them do it for me.
Oh,
man.
come on, man. Juicy.
Yeah.
The fucking 10 Crack Commandments.
I just think they're overhyped.
I don't know.
It's just overhyped.
They're definitely overplayed.
Maybe I'm too young. There's some awesome remixes of both of them, though.
Yeah.
It sounds like a really lame way. But what's cool is like all these pictures, and we'll have them on the page too. All the pictures of the Thuggee, like they're tatted out. Like Thug Life tattoos directly came from these dudes. They have Thuggee tattooed on their face, their stomach. Like, a lot of times they kept the tattoos hidden, but a lot of them are visible. And it's shit like Thug Life, like this is really where it came from. And it's just so brutal.
Right.
Like, I don't
it's something...
imagine a lot of people, like a lot of modern thugs knew that this is where their, name came from, or, influenced their and our culture,
Yeah. Yeah. I had no idea about this until you had even told me a couple weeks ago. And I was like, okay, well, we're fucking doing that. We're absolutely doing that.
Had to. These dudes, it's just so brutal and just wild. So that about wraps us up for the cult of the
I think that's going to do it for us today. We let's do a quick recap. So we talked about Tupac and Biggie. We talked about ritualistic murder and the British Empire. We talked about I'm loving it.
Blood rituals.
The
blood ritual.
Yeah.
Bro, I'm fucking loving it.
Oh, fuck. Do you have any dishonorable mentions you'd like to talk about today?
Yeah, fuck Sleeman, fuck Mark Twain, and fuck the British Empire.
I want to keep it rolling from my classic fuck Andy Warhol.
Yeah, man.
And fuck Bobby Flay. Still fuck Bobby Flay.
And fuck Steve Harvey.
Oh, fuck Steve Harvey.
Is there anybody else good? The list is gonna keep growing. It's gonna be, dude. It's gonna be fun to see where it goes.
I just have and I can picture if we continue on this path, and let's say we're 200, 300 episodes in. There's gonna be a 15-minute long segment at the end where it's just fuck this person, fuck that person, fuck this concept, fuck.
Embrace the anger. Let your hatred run through you. So before we get out of here, let's talk about what are we doing next, man?
Yeah.
Dude. So we're definitely in the future gonna have to work in an afterlife and a mushroom religion episode separate. What do you think of that Carts of Darkness? Cause we got entertainment next.
Yeah, I'm down with doing that. I was already planning on watching that this weekend anyway. So,
did you see any clips of it?
I have not. You gave me the kind of elevator pitch on it, and I was sold.
Dude, I haven't watched all of it yet, but this shit is wild, guys. Like, it's about this homeless community in Canada that, like, their recycling is worth more. People can live off of it in theory. So it's these dudes collecting glass. They're homeless dudes collecting glass bottles, and they're riding their shopping carts around this town. But the hills are super steep. So they're, like, skateboarding on these carts at speeds of, like, literally 40 to 60 miles an hour down these hills through traffic. They can't stop, and it's about their injuries and their like wrecks with cars and their bottles flying everywhere, and it's about how these dudes survive. And it seems like an absolutely brilliant documentary and very fun. So
yep, that's gonna be my Saturday.
Yeah, we got cool stuff coming up, big drops. Get these episodes out.
Got definitely remember to go check out our Instagram page. You can find us at Trashcats on Instagram. I also want to do a shout out to your brother John. Thank you, John. That's approaching human on SoundCloud. So you can support his music.
Check out my homie Chaotic Steel on Instagram. You'll find him. Just look up Chaotic Steel. We'll share some links. Check out some good music. I got my art on Instagram. Just look up Skyzix, SKYZICX, and I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. Thanks again for listening, and always remember,
here we go.
Kill in the name of Kali and do the blood ritual sacrifice. I'm loving it.
See you guys.
Ba, 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 ba.